Rain had been falling for hours, turning the streets of Portland into silver threads that glimmered under the dim cafe lights. Eli Turner sat by the window of a co-working cafe, his laptop open but forgotten. The cursor blinked on a blank design draft, as if waiting for him to admit that he had nothing left to create. His coffee had gone cold long ago. He watched droplets slide down the glass, their paths crossing and separating, an accidental metaphor for his own life. Caleb Hart had left that morning. He always left. As a freelance journalist, Caleb's work took him everywhere, Seattle, Denver, sometimes overseas, and every time, he promised the same thing, just a few days. It always became weeks. Eli had stopped asking when he would return. There was no point in pretending they shared the same life anymore. The apartment they once made a home had become a storage place for Caleb's half-unpacked suitcases and Eli's silence. Conversations had shrunk into text messages that never quite reached the heart of things. "How was your day?" "Fine. Miss you." "You too." The words meant nothing now, they floated between them like the noise of a dying signal. Eli wanted to believe love could survive neglect, that loyalty meant endurance, not joy. But lately, even that belief had started to fade. The cafe door opened with a rush of cold air, scattering the smell of rain through the room. A man stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a soaked jacket. He shook off the water with an easy laugh that drew the attention of half the room. Eli looked up only briefly, then back to his laptop. But a few moments later, the man took the seat across from him, plugging in his phone. "Every outlet's taken," the man said with a smile. "Hope you don't mind sharing." Eli shook his head. "Not at all. I'm Noah," he added, holding out a damp hand. Eli. The handshake was brief, but something about Noah's warmth lingered. His voice carried an ease that Eli hadn't heard in months, maybe years. They returned to their screens, yet silence between them didn't feel awkward. It felt alive. Minutes stretched into hours. Noah hummed quietly to the rhythm of his work, occasionally glancing out at the storm. When Eli finally closed his laptop, Noah noticed. "You've been staring at that thing for a while," Noah said. "Design work?" "Yeah. Mostly freelance graphics. Deadlines and coffee. That's my entire personality." Noah chuckled. "Could be worse. I used to work in finance. Numbers, meetings, stress, headaches. I quit last year. Been wandering since." "Wandering?" "Yeah. Trying to figure out what comes next. Moved here from Chicago 2 weeks ago. Portland felt like a place where people reinvent themselves." Eli nodded slowly. "Maybe that's true." For a moment, they just watched the rain together. The window fogged between them and the world outside, like a veil that made everything softer. Noah spoke again, his tone gentler now. "You look like someone who's been stuck in the same place for too long." Eli's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it, to say he was fine. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Maybe I just haven't found a reason to move." Their conversation drifted after that: music, books, favorite cities. It was ordinary, yet every word seemed to pull something from Eli's chest that had been locked away. The cafe emptied gradually, but neither of them moved. The barista switched the sign to closed, and still, they sat there, their voices low, their laughter quieter now. When Eli finally stood to leave, Noah offered to walk him home. Eli hesitated at the door. Caleb's absence hovered in his mind like a ghost, permission he hadn't been given but no longer needed. He declined politely. "It's just a few blocks," Noah said. "You shouldn't walk alone in this weather." "I'll be fine," Eli replied. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm used to walking alone." Noah's expression softened. "All right. Then at least take this." He handed Eli his umbrella. "You can return it if we run into each other again." Eli accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you." He stepped into the rain, the umbrella blooming above him like a dark flower. Behind him, the cafe lights dimmed. He didn't look back, though part of him wanted to. The sound of the rain was steady, almost hypnotic. Every footstep felt heavier the closer he got to home. When he reached the apartment, the hallway was quiet except for the hum of a distant elevator. Inside, a half-packed suitcase leaned against the couch. A note lay on the table: got called in early. Back next week. C.N. I love you. No sorry. Just that. Eli dropped the umbrella by the door. Water pooled around it. He sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the note until the letters blurred. He should have been angry. Instead, he felt nothing at all. He walked to the window and looked out at the street, where the rain continued to fall without pause. People passed by under umbrellas, heads bowed, moving quickly toward warmth. For a long time, he watched them. Then he turned off the lights, leaving only the city's reflection on the glass. The silence pressed around him, intimate and suffocating. Caleb's voice, his laughter, the way he used to hum in the kitchen, it all felt like echoes from another life. Eli wondered when he had last felt touched without obligation, seen without performance. His phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen: Noah, you look like someone who hasn't been seen in a long time. Eli stared at the words, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He could almost hear Noah's calm, steady tone. He thought about deleting the message, or replying with something neutral, something safe. But he did neither. He set the phone face down on the table and leaned back against the couch. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, echoing against the buildings. The air smelled of rain and something faintly metallic, like change approaching. Eli closed his eyes. In his mind, he could still see Noah's expression, the curious mixture of warmth and understanding that made the rest of the world disappear for a moment. He thought of the umbrella by the door, still dripping. He thought of Caleb's suitcase, the same one that had been packed and unpacked a dozen times before, and then, softly, as though speaking to the empty room, Eli whispered, I could walk for 3 days and not find what I'm missing here. The words lingered, fragile but certain. Somewhere in the distance, the rain began to slow, and the silence of the apartment seemed to breathe again. Eli didn't move. He just sat there, caught between guilt and longing, between what was lost and what might still be found. He didn't reply to Noah's message, but he knew he would see him again. He could already feel the pull, the quiet gravity of something he couldn't name yet, only sense. Outside, a single drop of rain slid down the windowpane, tracing a thin, unbroken line. Eli followed it with his eyes until it disappeared at the edge of the glass. He exhaled slowly, and somewhere in that breath, the story began to change. Eli Turner hadn't planned to see Noah Merrick again. He told himself that the message, the one that had kept him awake that night, was only a kind gesture, the kind of thing people say when they notice loneliness. He deleted it the next morning. But erasing words didn't erase how they made him feel. Days stretched quietly, heavy with routine. Caleb's absence filled the apartment like cold air. His side of the bed remained untouched. Work came and went without meaning. By the third evening, Eli found himself back at the cafe without realizing why. He ordered coffee, took his usual seat by the window, and opened his laptop as if hiding behind it. Noah appeared minutes later, as if the city had been small enough for coincidence to conspire. He smiled when he saw Eli. You still owe me an umbrella. Eli's mouth curved despite himself. I was hoping I'd run into you. That became the first of many small surrenders. They began meeting without planning to. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes walking through the riverfront park where autumn leaves scattered like faded confessions. Their conversations deepened effortlessly. Noah spoke about leaving Chicago, how he'd sold his apartment, walked away from a job that paid too well but demanded too much. Eli listened, drawn to his candor. Noah had the kind of courage that Eli admired and feared, the courage to start over. Eli spoke little of Caleb. When he did, his words were careful, shaped to sound loyal. He described Caleb's work, his charm, his passion for stories that mattered. But Noah saw through the spaces between those sentences. You talk about him like someone recalling a memory, he said one evening, their hands nearly brushing on a park bench. Eli looked away. Maybe that's what we are now. A memory that forgot to end. They sat in silence for a while, watching the water darken with the setting sun. Noah finally said, "You don't have to stay in something just because it once made sense." Eli wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe love could be chosen again, not simply endured. After that night, they started walking together often, long, meandering paths through quiet streets where lamplight fell in golden pools. Eli felt lighter in Noah's company, as though conversation itself could unburden him. He laughed easily again. He noticed small things, the way Noah gestured when he spoke, the faint scar on his jaw, the warmth of his voice when he said Eli's name, yet every moment of ease carried a thread of guilt. Caleb called once during one of those walks. Eli let it ring, pretending not to notice. "Don't you need to get that?" Noah asked. "It's no one," Eli said too quickly, but they both knew it wasn't true. One Friday night, Caleb texted that he'd be gone for another week. "Sorry, things got extended." Eli read the message twice before tossing his phone aside. He stood by the window, rain streaking the glass, feeling the quiet close in. Without thinking, he sent Noah a message, "Are you awake?" Minutes later came the reply, "Always." They met outside the cafe, the rain soft and persistent. Neither spoke as they walked. The air smelled of wet earth and distant thunder. When Noah reached for Eli's hand, Eli didn't pull away. The contact was simple, warm, grounding, but it sent a tremor through him. At Noah's apartment, the lights were low, the space small but welcoming. There were half-packed boxes, a canvas propped against the wall, sketches scattered on a table. Eli stood uncertainly by the doorway, as though entering a threshold he wasn't meant to cross. Noah poured 2 glasses of wine. "You look like someone who hasn't stopped thinking," he said quietly. Eli managed a hollow laugh. "It's kind of my specialty." Noah stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't have to explain anything." That was what undid him, not desire, but understanding. The room felt still, as if the air itself had drawn a breath. When Noah kissed him, Eli's instinct was to step back, to retreat into the safety of guilt. But the tenderness in Noah's touch disarmed him. It wasn't hunger, it was recognition. Time blurred. The rain outside grew heavier, striking the windows in steady rhythm. Eli's thoughts fractured between what he was losing and what he was finding. He wanted to stop, to say no, but his body betrayed him with need for warmth, for touch, for presence. Later, they lay in silence, the world reduced to breath and heartbeat. Eli traced the edge of Noah's hand, memorizing the shape as though it might vanish. Noah turned toward him, voice low. "You don't have to feel bad for wanting something real." Eli closed his eyes. "That's the problem," he whispered. "I don't even know what's real anymore." The rain softened to a whisper. Outside, dawn began to dilute the dark. When Eli finally left, the city felt unfamiliar. Every streetlight seemed to cast a new kind of light, one that exposed more than it concealed. He walked home slowly, his chest heavy but not regretful. The silence in his apartment was immediate, and Caleb's absence hung there like a truth that could no longer be ignored. He sat at the kitchen table, tracing circles on the wooden surface. His phone vibrated, a message from Caleb, boarding soon. Back early next week. Let's fix things when I'm home. Eli stared at the screen, the words almost absurd in their timing. He typed a reply, then erased it. The guilt came in waves, thick, suffocating, but underneath it all, a quiet relief pulsed. For once, he had felt something alive, something not built from obligation or routine. He walked to the window. The umbrella Noah had once lent him still stood by the door, unopened since that night. The sight of it made his stomach twist, a reminder of where things had started and how far he had already drifted. Morning light seeped through the curtains, pale and thin. Eli pressed his forehead against the glass and whispered, "What have I done?" The answer was silence. For 3 days, he didn't see Noah. He tried to bury himself in work, tried to silence the pull that had already taken root. But memories replayed without mercy, the warmth of Noah's hand, the way he listened, the quiet after the storm. On the 4th day, a message appeared, "I know I said I'd give you space, but I keep thinking about you." Eli stared at the text for a long time. He typed a response and deleted it. Then, almost without deciding, he picked up the umbrella and left the apartment. The city air was cool and sharp. He walked without direction, the umbrella unopened in his hand. Caleb would be home soon, and Eli had no idea what he would say. The truth was too heavy, too tangled with things he didn't yet understand. As he turned a corner, he saw Noah standing across the street outside the cafe, his expression uncertain but hopeful. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still. Eli hesitated, the weight of everything, love, guilt, longing, pressing down on him. Then he crossed the street. No words were spoken, but Noah smiled softly, the kind of smile that said "I know." Eli's voice barely rose above the hum of traffic. "He's coming back early." Noah nodded, his gaze steady. "Then we should talk before he does." Eli swallowed hard, the ache in his chest both familiar and new. He nodded once, quietly. The rain began again, gentle, persistent, like the start of something he could no longer ignore. When Caleb Hart returned, the air in the apartment shifted before the door even closed. He carried his usual travel-worn duffel, a weak smile, and the faint scent of airports, sterile, tired, impersonal. Eli Turner stood by the window, pretending to read an email he hadn't opened. He heard the key turn, the quiet thud of the bag hitting the floor, and then Caleb's voice, uncertain but warm, "Hey. I'm home." Eli turned, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah. Welcome back." Caleb stepped closer, hesitant, as though he sensed the invisible distance between them. "I thought we could start over, maybe. I know I've been gone too much. His voice faltered. "I miss you, Eli." Those words should have meant something. They once did. Now they sounded like a promise spoken too late, like a door closing just as someone reaches for it. Eli nodded slowly. "You should rest. You've had a long trip." Caleb studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You've been quiet lately. Is something wrong?" Eli almost said no, but the lie caught in his throat. He murmured, "I'm just tired." For the next few days, they moved around each other with careful politeness, sharing space without connection. Caleb cooked breakfast, Eli complimented it. Caleb reached for his hand on the couch, Eli flinched before remembering not to. Every gesture became a reminder of what they used to be, and what they were now pretending to still have. Eli tried to focus on normal things, his work deadlines, the hum of the refrigerator, the color of the sky before dusk, but beneath the surface, guilt simmered like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing. He hadn't seen Noah Merrick since that last meeting outside the cafe. No texts, no calls. Still, he thought about him constantly, the ease of his laughter, the unguarded honesty in his eyes. One evening, while Caleb was unpacking, a folded paper slipped from Eli's sketchbook onto the floor. Caleb bent to pick it up before Eli could stop him. It was a drawing, one Noah had made of Eli sitting by the window, his expression half shadowed by thought. Caleb's face drained of color as he studied it. "Who drew this?" Eli froze. "A friend." Caleb's voice dropped, brittle and low. "A friend?" He held the drawing up. "You don't look at friends like this. And they don't draw you like this." Eli took a step forward. "Caleb, is this why you've been distant?" Caleb's eyes searched his, desperate and furious all at once. "Did you cheat on me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and inescapable. Eli wanted to lie, to deny it, but his silence answered before he could speak. Caleb exhaled sharply, dropping the sketch onto the table. "God, Eli." His voice cracked, not in anger, but in hurt. "You could have just told me you were lonely." That broke something inside Eli. The truth of it cut deeper than accusation. "I didn't plan it," he said softly. "I didn't even know I was capable of it. I just needed to feel something again." Caleb pressed his palms against his eyes. "After everything we built," his words faded into a whisper. "You should have let me try to fix it. I did, Eli said. For years, I tried. You were gone. You were always gone. Silence fell. Outside, the rain began again, tapping gently against the glass as if marking time. Caleb looked up finally, his eyes red but steady. So what now? Eli shook his head. I don't know. Caleb didn't answer. He walked to the bedroom, returned with his duffel bag, and began to pack quietly. No yelling, no slammed doors, just the sound of zippers and folded clothes, the dull rhythm of endings. When he paused by the doorway, he said only, "Take care of yourself, Eli." Eli nodded, unable to speak. Then Caleb was gone. The apartment felt cavernous after that. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was raw, echoing. Eli sat on the couch, the sketch lying beside him. His reflection in the window looked older somehow, worn by choices that couldn't be undone. Days passed in a blur of half-slept nights and muted mornings. Work emails went unanswered. Meals remained untouched. Every sound outside, the slam of car doors, the murmur of passing voices, felt like the world continuing without him. Then, one afternoon, a small envelope appeared in his mailbox. No name, no return address, just his own written neatly on the front. Inside was a postcard. On it, a hand-drawn figure walked down a winding road beneath a wide sky. At the bottom corner, a single line, "Keep walking." Eli stared at it for a long time, tracing the ink with his thumb. Noah's handwriting was unmistakable. That night, he left the apartment. The air smelled of rain again, soft and clean. He walked aimlessly through the city, past the cafe, past the park bench where they used to talk, past the river that had witnessed his hesitation. Every streetlight seemed to illuminate some small truth he hadn't faced. That he reached the waterfront just as dusk began to fall, the horizon glowing faintly like a promise. The water shifted in gentle waves, catching the last light of day. He stood there for a long time, breathing in the quiet that I and the reflection. He didn't see the man who had betrayed someone. He saw a man learning how to live after breaking. That he whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe love isn't about who stays. Maybe it's about who reminds you to keep moving." The wind picked up slightly, carrying the smell of rain and sea salt. Eli closed his eyes, letting the cool air wash over him. The guilt hadn't vanished, it never would. But in its place was something quieter, a strange, fragile piece. That he took the postcard from his pocket and looked at it again. The figure on the road seemed to move as the wind tugged at the paper, as if urging him forward. He smiled faintly, a small, exhausted kind of smile. "I could walk for 3 days," he murmured, "and maybe then I'd finally find myself." The city lights flickered on behind him. The river whispered its endless rhythm. Eli turned away from the water and began to walk. Each step felt lighter, steadier. The night opened around him, vast and uncertain, but no longer frightening. As he disappeared down the dim street, a light rain began to fall, soft, forgiving, endless. Somewhere, in another city, perhaps Noah would feel it too.